Welcome in, everybody, to the Bare Knuckle Recovery Podcast. As always, I am Tommy Streeter. This is Nate Mollering, and as you guys can see, we've got two guests with us today. We've got Alice Jordan, who is the mom of an addict, and then we've got Teresa Juillerat, who anyone who has been following us for the last 3 years, you've definitely heard us mention Teresa's name, I don't know, countless times.
Hundreds.
So we'll talk about that here in a little bit. Nate, I'm kind of going to let you take over since this one was your idea. You invited the guests for this one. So what are we going to be talking about today?
We're going to talk about a couple things, but really I think the focus for today is going to be on, it's going to be on the families of people kind of left behind, whether they've lost their loved one to substance use or whether the person's still out struggling with substance use. You know, my friend Alice and I were having a conversation the other day, and it came up that, you know, she has taken on the responsibility of raising three of her grandchildren. And, you know, Teresa and I went to Washington together, I think back in 2022. It was September 2022. And there was a woman who spoke at the roundtable we were at with Congress. She said that you're going to face a youth and elder crisis like you've never seen before. There's a whole generation missing in the middle. Tommy and I's generation, we just talked about both of us in our early 30s. But the generation of people that are kind of in their early 40s, 20s, and even some of the teens, right? Where that group has either been incarcerated, they're out on the street, or they've passed away. And she said, I am 63 years old, and I'm taking care of my 4-year-old granddaughter. She said, I am tired. She said, I love her to death. She said, but in 10 years, I'm going to be 73, and she's going to be 14. Who's going to take care of me, and who's going to take care of her? And I just sat there, and I said, that's a good question. You know, we talk all the time about the people that are left behind and even the people that are lost. But I think we often, what does that really mean, though? What are the details associated with that? What does that look like? And most people don't even begin to understand or can't even visualize that unless we come out and we talk about it and we paint a very real picture through our own life experiences of what that looks like. Right? So one of the things, too, we're going to do real quickly is have Teresa kind of give us a little background on herself, and then Alice will have you give a background on yourself. But Teresa, since you're bare knuckle recovery famous, please share a little bit about yourself, of course, Java, your organization, and then also how we met.
Sure. So I started my advocacy journey back in 2018 when we started supporting families through JAVA, which stands for Justice, Accountability, and Victim Advocacy. We were supporting families of homicide victims. And at that time, I was passionate about doing that just because I just love loving on people and helping any way that I can. But I always, at that time, felt very unequipped to talk to these parents who have lost children because I was still able to go home to my kids at night. So supporting them, you know, it went a long way because when you lose a child, you just want to be heard. You don't really want advice, so to speak. You just want somebody to listen to you and have your feelings validated. So fast forward to May 12th of 2020, when I got the call and it was my son, the tables immediately turned. And it was, at the time, I didn't know. I mean, when I responded to the call, I'm the one that found my son unresponsive. I'm the one that called 911. I'm the one that administered CPR. And during that time, I remember thinking, what happened? And that's the first thing people want to know, what happened. I didn't know. I thought my son had experienced some sort of medical emergency or something. Drugs was probably the farthest from my mind. Now I know we'll talk about hindsight later, but at the time, my son had been battling some legal issues, and I knew that he had endured a lot of trauma just in his own circle of friends. He had self-medicated. His drug of choice at the time was marijuana. And so that was the extent of what I knew. And so when this happened, I didn't want to label him because, again, not knowing. And then I waited for the toxicology to come back. And it was at that time that I read that it was attributed to fentanyl and that he had over 10 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his system. And I learned that from the coroner because those reports are non-human readable sometimes. You don't know what you're looking at. So I'm staring at this piece of paper, and again, I don't know what fentanyl is. And so I started to research and just thought, if this is a drug that's out here in our streets, why hasn't it hit my radar? Why have I never heard about it? And it's killing people. Like, why isn't this on the news? Why isn't this a bulletin? And at the time, that was at the brink of COVID. But with this taking lives the way it was, and again, I thought I was alone. I didn't know that this was a epidemic. But I almost, as a parent, expected a COVID-like response, a notification, a bulletin across the TV screen that just is making people aware that this is risky, this is dangerous. So as just out of desperation, I was calling and trying to meet with anybody, talk to anybody that would talk to me. And that's when a friend of mine pointed me to you two. And I'll never forget that first sit down that we had. I met with you both, and you guys were both there to answer every question that I had. You made me feel like there were others like me out there, and I learned that you guys were talking about it. And, it just never hit my radar. And I tell people now that even then in that sit down with you guys, I would have never labeled my son an addict. Even in that moment, knowing fentanyl is his cause of death, I still would have said no, because in my mind, I was on that stigma bandwagon. I was, no, addiction is bad. And no, not my son. My son was a good kid. Like he made bad choices, but he would have never done anything beyond marijuana. He would have never. And so again, just being uneducated at the time, I tell people now that my story has changed slightly because my son had addiction-like tendencies and was trying to self-medicate, trying to cope, trying to take the pain away by any means necessary. And if that came in the form of a pill that's going to take him away from the trauma that he was experiencing and the mental health, that just went unnoticed because then I didn't know the signs on what he needed. So all that kind of factored into me even picking up the phone and contacting you guys. And we had a very good it was very informative to me. And my takeaway, one of the takeaways was, this was not a parental failure, because when you lose a child or when your child makes bad choices, you instantly blame yourself. And that's natural. As a parent, you think, where did I go wrong? What could I have done differently? What could I have said that would have made him choose differently? And just understanding now that everyone is given free will, and that, I cannot hold that burden of any choice that my son made. There are things I can do, which is, we can probably get into that as part of our discussion, but just getting out in the community and making others aware that you are not alone.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, what you've shared with us will lead into our larger discussion too about you talk about an epidemic, and just like with COVID, where there were a lot of people that got sick and passed away, there's a lot of things that after the fact, the shockwave you have to deal with, right? And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, is the shockwave of addiction, whether it's because, we get our loved ones stolen from us. Sometimes they pass away, but sometimes they're stolen from us while they're still alive, So with that, Alice, do you want to share a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your story?
God, there's so much. It's been 15 years of hell. My son was a very, very, very good soccer player. As a matter of fact, his sophomore year at high school, he was offered a full ride from my alma mater to play soccer. The kid could make a goal from a corner kick. I was, My husband at the time was not Ross's father, but he was the one who raised him, Ross, his junior year or so, tore his ACL. And he was going to the doctor, Pediatrics Associates. When you turn 18, the kids could go to the doctors by themselves, drive them there themselves. So knowing that Ross, had tore his ACL, and I just didn't think, hindsight is 2020. I just didn't think what he was doing in regards to continuing his medication or whatnot. I thought he was going to physical therapy, a person who only gets paid once a month. I didn't go through my mail every day. I just do it once a month. You get those EOBs. I mean, there was an extensive amount. And again, I blame myself for a lot of it. But I also was noticing when I looked at those EOBs, those explanation of benefits, Ross was going to this doctor a lot. And I was like, how could I not have caught that? So the first time I ever gave Ross Narcan is when at the time, his 9-year-old daughter found him. There's nothing in this world that prepares you as a parent to find your child blue. So I gave him the Narcan. Thank God Kevin Hunter gave me that Narcan.
Yeah, Kevin Hunter.
So go to Lutheran Hospital. And, I don't know what's going on, but the nurses do. And I don't know, but they made me feel so less of, Yeah. I didn't know what was going on. Ross knew why he was in there. I didn't know what was going on, Thought he had an adverse, reaction to, I don't know. I can't tell you. My focus really was dealing with Audrina, who thought her dad died, So I remember looking at Ross just like it was yesterday. And I said to him, Ross, mijo, how did we get here? He says, Mom, when they shut down the doctors, it was easier for me to get heroin on the street than it was a pill. And I remember sitting back in my chair thinking, oh my God, I was part of that system. Long story short, Ross is got into school. He was doing so well. He's a great dad, Nate. He's a great dad. He loves his girls. He has 5 girls. He was going to school. He would relapse. I never would want to believe it because I believed everything he said to me.
You want to believe that your kids are doing well.
I wanted to believe everything.
You look for the good.
Right. And we're a family of faith, and so Ross, ended up getting married to another addict. They ended up having 2 children. One's just been, today she's 3 months old, but she was born addicted. And so over the years, Ross has continued to use, and I've always, always welcomed him back because, one of the things I've learned in attending support groups of moms of kids who are addicts is that you're never to turn your back on them because everybody else has.
Right.
And I feel I'm fairly educated. What's the difference between an enabler and supporting your kid?
Right.
So now being at an age of 58 years old, just 3 months ago, I just sat down with a financial advisor and was planning on retiring in a couple years.
Yeah.
That ain't happening. That's not happening. And it's like, I feel very upset with him right now because he was just recently arrested for selling fentanyl, a level 2 felony. And I just can't even put my mind around that. And so much so that, I have blocked the jail calls because my energies in the space I have left in my brain and my mentality, I have to focus on these girls. And so, I wanted, again, when I reached out to Nate, that, I wanted to get him in rehab. I have little 401k left because of all, when you pay 10 grand for a 60-day stay and they stay 6 days, they don't give your money back.
Right.
And so many times I do feel alone, but because of my field, I know that I have a very powerful platform. And my powerful platform is this, is that I speak my truth. What's going on with my kids is my life today. And I want to break that vicious cycle and letting him sit there and face his consequences because mom can't fix this one. And Ross, I've also understood, and I've kind of always made excuses, is that Ross's dad has always denied him. And he has a brother that is less than 2 weeks younger than him, and they look exactly alike, and he lives with his father. And that's always been a thing for Ross. And again, not that I'm making excuses, but I also know that mental health and trauma impacts addicts.
It's real.
And for anybody that doesn't, I'll fight you to the very end because they all are connected.
They are.
And they're all intertwined. And, as I said to you all earlier, I'm in the field of saving everybody else's kid. And it's, when I was always out there helping my own community, sometimes I felt my community was failing me because there was no affordable services back then, or local, or you had to wait, or, just all kinds of things. And I think also that the way the system is now is that it's broken. I mean, shocker, because we as families need to be part of that continuity of care.
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry, F HIPAA, F privacy, because it's invading in my privacy. And I'm having to put everything else on the side, and I'll do everything for my grandchildren. I'll do anything I'll give my life for my grandchildren. But in order for us, because Ross is getting out sometime, all addicts are getting out sometime. And we can't set them up to fail.
Right.
I mean, I'll know, when Ross got out of prison the first time, he couldn't even get an apartment because he had a felony.
Right.
Needs
transitional housing.
Yes. I mean, and it's not in a section that further stigmatizes, further, knocks a nail in that coffin that they can never run away from that, that bad choice that they made, and I'm not making excuses for what Ross did. I'm not, because he had a village. Ross had a village. He was more fortunate than a lot of people. And a lot of people even told him over and over and over again, Ross, you're lucky. You still have people that call you, or you can call, or they accept your call, or they send you money, or they send you a letter. You still have those. And it's not one person, it's your family.
Right.
And he still never saw that. And it's just, now I feel that the breakdown in services right now is for the people who are stepping in for these kids. Because we all know it's not a secret. We don't have enough foster families as it is.
Right. 100%.
And even to find a foster family that will take a 3-month-old that was born addicted to heroin, fentanyl, and methadone, and morphine.
Right. Because of stigma.
Exactly.
Right.
So, I just, I want all your listeners and your viewers to know that you're not alone if you're in my situation. It's not a club we ever wanted to be in.
No.
Definitely don't want the t-shirt or the sweatshirt, but it is what it is. And I think that changes need to be made in the system so that it's not, it's not a vicious cycle, because also I have to worry about the trauma of the girls now.
Right.
I can no longer lie to the 15-year-old.
No.
I just can't. I can't lie to her anymore about it.
No.
And it's costly to have somebody in prison.
Yeah.
It's costly to have him in jail.
Isn't it? Yeah.
It is. It's costly, but Ross made his bed, and now his mom is making him finally live in it.
And I think we really want families to realize that, both of you are so involved in the community, that it can happen to anybody.
It can happen to anybody.
Right. I think a lot of people fall into that category where they just feel so much shame
Yeah.
and guilt. but it's not your fault as a parent. And, and there are people out there that are going through the same struggle. And I think it's important those people connect with each other too.
Well, I
'cause you need
think
support.
that as a society, we need to change the language, because we all know language is very critical when it comes to mental health in the field of addiction. We need to start, first of all, accepting mental health like any other socially accepted illness. But it's a disease.
Yeah.
It is a disease. I mean, look how hard it is for people to stop smoking cigarettes.
Right.
And that's legal. So it just, sometimes the ignorance, the level of ignorance, the level of insensitivity as well, further perpetuates that stigma, that shame, that loneliness,
Right.
that also opens the doors to other things as well.
Sure.
For that particular caregiver to start self-medicating
Right.
unhealthily.
Yes.
It's a terrible cycle.
And you would never call someone having to undergo cancer treatment
Right.
as selfish.
Right.
No.
Right.
No, no one chooses to be an addict. No one, especially, there's people that are predisposed to
Right.
addiction, whether their brain is not wired properly, whatever it is, right? Whether it's trauma, whether it's genetic or whether it's their environment, right?
Sure,
But there
sure.
are things that open us up. I know the first time I took a substance, it did something to me that it doesn't do to most people, right? Like, I almost like to describe it to people, and some people get offended when I say this because, they don't want to be associated with addicts, but it's like type 1, type 2 diabetes. I believe there's type 1 addicts, there's type 2. Meaning there's people who are born predisposed, but also I always caution people with the type 2, you can party so much that you beat the crap out of that part of your brain that feels pleasure, right? And pain, that it can mess it up to where it can't reach homeostasis again anymore.
Right.
But, I think it's important that we do recognize it. It's a disease that centers in the brain. Right. And it really does take over people's lives. And
Right.
it's that fight or flight. People that are craving and that do these things, literally, they feel like they're going to die if they don't get it. Your brain is screaming, we need this to survive. It literally reorders the hierarchy of need in your mind, whereas like you might have, food, sleep, shelter, sex, whatever else. It like wipes the whiteboard and it writes heroin. That's why you see people who look like they haven't eaten for days because they probably haven't.
Because they haven't.
Right? Because when you get $20, you're not like, well, let me go get $5 worth of food. You're like, if I could get $15 worth of heroin versus $20, I'm going to do $20. I'll figure out the food later. And it does the same thing to people when they're parents of children, right? People say, oh, you're a bad parent. Well, again, everything inside of them is screaming that we have to get this substance, which we found, which is basically our solution to life. I always tell people the first time I tried an opiate, I had a semi-spiritual experience. People probably think, well, how is that possible? I felt like there was something missing my entire life. And when I took an opiate for the first time, I felt this is how everybody else feels. And this is how I should feel every single day for the rest of my life, no matter what it takes. No matter what happened to me, it was always I just have to get some opiates so I can think and figure out a plan. I could have just got ordered out of jail for possession or getting caught in a sting operation at a drug house. I got to get high so I can figure out what to do next. And that goes against all rationale of human beings, right? So that's why I think it's so hard for people on the outside looking in to understand when you really don't understand it. And if you educate yourself, you do start to learn about the brain science and everything behind it and how our society predisposes people to be susceptible to addictive behavior, right? Like they talk a lot about we have a dopamine economy, meaning that you're sold something every 5 seconds. You turn on the TV. If you get a Toyota, your family's going to all go on vacation together. Everyone's going to be happy and they're going to have a great time. You're going to get a sing-along like they were when they were kids. And then you can go through McDonald's and then your kids get a Happy Meal and they're going to have a great time, right? And then you go home and you buy a Samsung and you can watch Netflix and you buy a Samsung, the whole family's going to watch movies just like they used to, right? And it's this next thing. It's these hits of dopamine in our brain. So that way when we get that drug, your brain's already wired that way, right? And we start kids from a young age on that stuff. So when they get it, they're not prepared. They're not prepared.
Right.
In terms of lack of services, we know the jail is not equipped to offer treatment to those who become incarcerated, find themselves incarcerated, whether it's due to a drug charge or not. We've got those that are getting jailed that are users. And so we know that behind bars, there is a lack of treatment and just things that would help coach them and rehabilitate them mentally and physically, just to help them wean them off of the drugs and just educate them on, what they're battling. And because of that, I feel maybe if something like that was offered in the jail, my son had a short incarceration stint. It was 3 months, and he, I believe, was experimenting with these drugs prior to his incarceration. So when he was released, again, unbeknownst to me, he was battling an addiction of some sort. So when he was released, tolerance, again, hindsight, I know now, tolerance probably played a factor in his death, because within 46 hours of his release is when I found him unresponsive, and which led to his death. So again, things like Narcan, I didn't know what that was at the time. Things that he was battling, maybe I could have helped. But, I won't take that whole responsibility on my own shoulders, because he was in their house for 3 months in the jail. And so the lack of just education and treatment in general, materials, curriculum
just
of some
reading
sort.
materials, just reading materials, something that supports or encourages rehabilitation. It just makes me so mad that those things are not available. I realize they've done a crime. They've committed a crime. I get that. I understand that. But you know what? Let's help them be a better person, because they're going to be back into society. So let's not make them be so, have that sense that that they're not worthy, they're not, that they're never going to be given a chance. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but darn it just makes me so mad that there's no resources that is, later than 2005 that they can get their hands on, other than the Bible.
Right.
And we know that they're all issued tablets. So if there's
But you know how much it is to use the tablets? That who's got to pay for it? Me.
Right. The family. Yeah.
Well, and that really goes to show something that you were talking about earlier, Alice, which is, so Chris was sober for 3 months while he was in jail. The drugs weren't the problem. If the drugs were the problem, when he got out, he wouldn't have started using drugs again. You were talking about how mental health and addiction go hand in hand, and that is something that we talk about all the time, but that's a perfect example of that. You're right. When he was in there, and I don't think JCAP was part of Allen County Jail at the time. It is now.
No, it's pretty new.
We're definitely big fans of JCAP.
Yes,
we love that program, but it's such a small program. It's great that they have it. If they could expand it, that would be incredible.
But see, the thing is, why doesn't our community want to expand it? Look how much it's costing us to incarcerate them.
Correct.
We can't even decide, which shovel they're going to use for the new jail.
Yeah.
Who's gonna get all that glory for that? Let's put in money on the beginning and not put it in on the outset, so we don't have to fight about how many bonds we're gonna be taking out for the jail. I understand jail is not the Ritz-Carlton. I get that.
Right.
And I don't think that they should, they should have the ability to have all the great things. I'm not saying that, but let's help them become a better person.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be your neighbor.
Right.
They're going to be your Uber driver.
Yeah,
they're going to be, they're going to be in our communities. They're going to be your neighbor.
We need them in our community.
Yes,
too.
we do.
We can't afford to throw them away.
And the thing is, I just don't understand it. It's not rocket science.
Right.
Ray Charles could see the benefits of all this, and he's blind.
Right. Yeah.
And I just don't understand. JCAP, I don't understand why the previous administration did not want JCAP into our program when there was so many research it was in our own state that showed how beneficial it was. And the thing is, it wasn't us in academia saying that this program worked. The results were all peer reported, meaning that it came from the people who received the services. They said it from their own mouth. If it wouldn't have been for them, they'd be using again, or they would have been out robbing, or thieving or raping or whatever, if it wasn't for this program.
Yeah. And we see on a daily basis the positive impact.
Right,
Just
exactly.
JCAP alone has in our community in Allen County. I see it in Kosciuszko County.
Yes. Nate, Tommy, Aisha Dis, they give me hope.
Yep.
They give me hope. And why? Is because, you benefited from good programs.
Right.
And Aisha, she speaks her truth too.
Yep.
She says that, she was incarcerated. She was this, she was that. And, people never thought she never thought she would be.
Where
And look
she
at her
is.
now.
Yeah,
she
she's
has her
helping
own
people.
501c3.
Helping people.
Yes. I
Yep.
mean, in the jail, and again, it's not the Hilton. I understand that. And they have to pay for what they've done. But the entire family shouldn't have to pay.
Right. Well,
and
you've got a captive audience, I mean, literally, while they're in jail. So why don't we do something? It's supposed to be the Department of Corrections. Why aren't we correcting, right? We have to correct the underlying behavior and the underlying reasons why they behave that way. If you could take someone, if you have them for a year,
it's
you
the
could do so
perfect
much
opportunity
work.
for them to, because while they're not in jail, they might not ask for that help, but while they're sitting there not doing anything else, if it's presented and offered to them,
Or even
the
if you
majority of them
say,
are gonna
like,
say,
oh, I
yeah.
don't want to do it, and you're like, well, you're going to do it. You're here. This is why you're here. You're going to do it. Some people say, oh, well, people only do it if they want to. I don't believe that. I believe that, I know so many people that were put on drug court, and I know you have to voluntarily go to drug court, but that doesn't mean they wanted to do it. They didn't want to get a felony. But I know people that were also court-ordered to go to treatment. And the hope is that while they're getting that, even though they don't want to do it, something clicks. Right. They wake up one day and they're like, you know what? I'm not dope sick today. I laughed today. Huh. Maybe there's something to this sobriety recovery thing. Maybe I'll hang around for a little bit and see what it's about. And then eventually they start getting stuff back and they're like, you know what? I don't want to go pick up again. I want to be in recovery. I didn't know I wanted it, but it's something that I have now and I want to keep it, Right. So you have them in there. Let's do as much as we can to rehabilitate. You know what I mean? If they don't know how to read, let's teach them how to read. If they don't know how to write, let's teach them how to write. If they don't know how to stay sober, let's teach them how to stay sober. Let's deal with that trauma.
Right.
And I know easier said than done, but I definitely think we could do more and more. And it's like you said, it costs so much. The recidivism costs even more, right? It costs a lot to house and feed someone. Right. And then on top of that, they're going to come back because the recidivism rate is super high. I mean, I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but I've heard it's like 80, 70%, something high.
Right.
Right. So if we can get them back out, and as I stated before, these are people we need.
Sure.
So when you're a criminal, you don't stop being a father. You don't stop being a mother. You don't stop being a potential employee, a potential volunteer, right? You don't stop being someone's neighbor who used to take their trash cans down because they're elderly and they can't do it themselves.
Right.
We need those people back. And like you've said, people like Asha and other people you mentioned, I mean, some of the people that have been rehabilitated, the people that have been through crap are some of the best people you'll ever meet.
Absolutely.
Some of the most empathetic and people that are the most passionate and able to help and speak from life experience, and they can help others that are going through it. But also the hope is we engage in things like what you alluded to earlier, prevention. I don't think we do enough prevention. No. Right? We got to help people.
It's always downstream.
It's downstream, right? And somebody said, you keep pulling people out of the river, let's go upstream and find out why they keep falling in.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I can't take credit for that. I read it on Facebook or something, but it's true, right?
Right. Right. And also I think while they have this captive audience, they need to prepare them when they go out and back into the community. They need to prepare when every application for housing gets denied. That they get that no, and then they get so upset, and then they go back to their unhealthy coping. Why not just go back and use?
Yep.
At least I was, high and I could deal with life. Versus them just sitting there and just playing cards all day.
Right.
I think that is definitely one of the flaws with JCAP is that it stops when they complete the program and they either go home or go to community corrections depending on their case. But there's another program in Indiana called IRACs. I'm not sure if you're familiar with IRACs.
What? I just heard about that not too long ago.
It's similar to JCAP, but it's offered to everybody in the jail. And so they can sign up for it. They meet with a case manager while they're there, but it actually follows them when they leave the jail. They continue to meet with that case manager to work on all of that other stuff.
Continuity of care, going back to continuity of care.
So it's a great
and I think
program.
also is that we need to stop putting a Band-Aid on addicts. It's almost to a point of holistic care,
Correct.
because a lot of their mental and physical needs have been, have not been met over the years, not only versus training, them, getting what they need so that they can support their family. They can, get back into society, be contributing members of society, be taxpayers.
Right.
I mean, come on. It's not rocket science. And if I had time, I'd run for office and change the whole damn system, honestly, because I'm so tired of of people in positions that can make laws that make them from afar. And they're not making them from the shoes of the people who are walking in it, or at least not having us at the table.
Well, not to get political, I've always been a proponent of.
I was just about to say, Nate's always been a huge proponent of
I'm
local.
a proponent of grassroots local organizations. I get very frustrated when, the bureaucracy, it's so clunky and so people talk about, Washington. So you pass a bill in Washington, D.C., right, for recovery. So it works for somebody in Fort Indiana, it doesn't work for somebody in Spokane, Washington. Well, works for somebody in Spokane, Washington, doesn't work for somebody in Austin, Texas. Doesn't work for somebody in Arkansas, doesn't work for somebody in New England, right, up in Boston. You need people that are on the ground, and even I think our reps at the House level would even admit, and of course at the Senate level, right, the districts were created so you had direct representation in Washington. Us here in Allen County could put together a pretty good coalition of people who could say, hey, here's what our demographic looks like, here's the issues we're facing, and here's how we could probably tackle it and track it directly. Not that the numbers have to go from this place to this place to this place to this place, and by the time they get to there, by the time you get something back to Washington State House, it's probably a year old. You're not making real-time decisions. Right. And by the time you get the funding through, and we saw it with the opioid epidemic, by the time you get the funding through when the law's passed, the drugs have changed, the problems changed, the dynamics have shifted. It's all, we're playing from behind, I think, is a lot of it.
Right. We're reactive versus proactive.
And that's why I love grassroots local organizations, because they're on the ground. They see things happening in real time. People like Asha, people like Teresa.
Yeah. Because what works in Allen County may not work in Marion County.
Or even DeKalb County, which is right next to us.
Right,
I mean, they're a totally different county.
Exactly. I teach at Purdue, and I take my law and ethics class at Judge Davis's courtroom when she was behind the bench, and I still take them to Judge Hands.
Yeah.
That, mental health court, restoration court, I mean, that's the biggest secret in our community. And to see, first of all, every person who goes up to that microphone, first of all, is greeted with respect, and they ask them, "How are you today?"
Yeah.
They're shocked by how they're in a courtroom, they're scared as all get out.
Right.
They're one step away from being incarcerated, but somebody's giving them a chance.
Yeah,
and even though they made a mistake, and even though that their piss tests came back positive, right, you're not sitting there and slapping them on their hand. They're saying that, we know you're human, and that life throws you curveballs. We just have not given you enough of tools so that when life throws you challenges that you don't turn back to using, you'll turn back to doing something more positive. Yeah. I mean, I sat there and I called you, Nate. I sat there and I just cried because it was like, why wasn't my son given this opportunity? Why isn't it every addict given this opportunity? And I'm not saying that every addict deserves a second, third, and fourth chance, because some people just don't want to change. I mean,
true.
I'm a true believer that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink it.
Yeah.
So I have learned the hard way, and I'm sure a lot of your viewers too, is that I always thought that Ross hit rock bottom. He has yet to hit rock bottom.
There's always a trap door. You can always go lower. Right.
Yep, absolutely. That is something that we talk about all the time.
Yeah. Specific to the trauma that is kind of, but someone told me once, and his name's Wyatt Mullinax. He's a very wise man. I don't know if you guys know Wyatt Mullinax. He's been involved in drug court for years. And he said, if you don't deal with your pain, just transfer it to everybody else. And at one point in my life, I was like a sprinkler of pain, just spraying everything that was around me, people that were closest to me. And that caused trauma for a lot of people, specifically my parents and my sisters, okay? Especially my younger sister. I don't like to talk about my younger sister because I get very emotional. Tommy seen me cry really hard a couple times talking about her. She's doing fine now. She's actually a master's in social work, and she's helping people at Northwestern Hospital today. So something positive came out of all my crap. But, they went through a lot of things they didn't ask for. And one of the things we were talking about, they found me overdosed multiple times. She was a high schooler. She had to hold my head up in the back of my dad's car one time while I was blue, while she's trying to help me breathe. And we had to pull over so the paramedics could pull me out and Narcan me. But she was watching me die in her arms, a young girl, probably high school aged. And, just also what my mother went through, my father, just always expecting that call. My mother would tell me that when I was home, she wouldn't sleep at night more than an hour because she'd wake up every night and she'd come in my room and she'd put her hand on my back to make sure I was still breathing. And then she'd go back to bed for a little bit and she'd wake up in a panic and come into my room and just what that was like for her. And then also both of you, what you experienced as, family members and then how you've dealt with that since, because there's a lot of people out there that are traumatized. And we were talking about too, that the caregivers, mothers in particular, right, have a special bond with their children, and you experience the trauma and you keep going because you got other kids and you got grandkids and you have to be the strong one. But it's okay not to be the strong one. It's okay to say, I have trauma and deal with it. So if you guys both want to speak on that, we'd be grateful to hear that.
Sitting here next to you, I just feel really guilty sometimes because there's many times that I wish Ross died.
Well, and I've also talked to other parents who have experienced the life of addiction. Like my son's struggle was a few short months. So I didn't have, and I found myself saying, God took him from me, but I look at that as a blessing because I couldn't survive the years and years and years of the trauma with my son alive, but not living. I guess.
Nate and I were just talking about that last week. To
So
someone
don't
in
feel,
a similar situation.
Because my heart goes out to you because of your current situation. Your son is very much alive and mine is not. But it doesn't mean that our trauma isn't equally as traumatic. It's terrible.
It is. When you said that about your mom, I remember many times going to Ross and just, are you breathing? And I do. I feel so. As a suicide prevention specialist for the state, I'm on many suicide scenes. And why couldn't that be him? So it would at least I could have put closure. And at least his daughters could put closure. They could move on and not have to go through life being ashamed of their dad. I felt really bad for my granddaughter, Audrina, a couple weeks ago when somebody asked her what her dad does. And she didn't even answer. And I said to her later, I said, Mama, why didn't you tell them what? She goes, Mom, what would I tell them? He's a drug user. He's a drug pusher. So, it's just, I don't know. It's just, I'm just so mad at him. I'm just so mad at him because he had a great life, too much of a great life, honestly. He was the Amelia Marcos of skateboards. He had more skateboards than anybody who even goes to skateboard park. I always felt that I had to, make up for his dad not being there for him, and he was a great student. He always wanted to be an architect. He always wanted to build the fastest roller coaster at Cedar Point because we always went there for family vacations year after year. And I got him those Connect things and he would make those every time. And, and it's just to me, I'm just so mad at him right now. I'm just so mad at him.
I'm more mad at the drug. Because in all the families that I've met in this, it's almost been 4 years since I met with you guys the first time. Yeah. And all these kids were amazing. All these kids have bright futures and goals and plans and kids that they leave behind.
Yeah.
And, I've not met a mom yet that has said, my child, deserved this. Or, we all have great things to say about our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of the trauma, that this is for me as just experiencing the loss of a child, the trauma is very similar to probably what your parents have felt, because when I got that call, every call thereafter, I associate it with something bad has happened.
I didn't even think of that. Wow.
Even when I pick up the phone, I have to listen to the background noise of that call because depending, like if I hear, and there's been people that are laughing, but to me it sounds like crying. I'm instantly, especially when it's my daughter or when it's one of my grandkids, I'm ready to put my shoes on and I'm out the door.
You're in fight or flight.
I'm
You're in
fight or flight because something's wrong. The only reason somebody is calling me is because they need me and somebody has died.
Oh,
And it's taken me, again, we're almost 4 years into it, and and my daughter has made the comment, like, why can't you just answer the phone like normal people? I'm like, I don't know. As much as I want to, I'm afraid.
trauma changes us.
It really does. It really does. And I'll never do CPR on a live person ever again. Never expected I'd do it on my own child, but it's taken that away from me. So it's more, I'm a rescuer, and as much as I would want to run to help, I would have to turn a blind eye because it would take me back into the throes of someone losing a child, somebody is dying, somebody, and even again, the guilt of, did I do CPR right? Did I follow protocol? And so the trauma is never ending. And the work that I do with Java and in the community has its own special healing, which is why I'll continue to help these moms. I reached out to a mom today, like, let's do coffee, let's do lunch, let's do something, because I know not everyone can be in the front lines. Not everyone can talk in front of the microphone, talk publicly about their pain.
Yeah.
And others can. And there's been some people that I've met that I never thought I would be able to see them rise up. And when I witness a family go from the very worst to I see them speaking, I see them outwardly helping other families. And that's the most beautiful thing to me, because I know I'm not going to take credit for any of that, but I played a small part in reminding them that you're still a fighter. So let's direct your anger, let's direct your pain on something that you can bring change. Like, you have a voice, and let's put action to that.
Powerful.
Yeah.
And that's why Nate and I wanted to have both of you on the show, because you both are, like you just said, not everybody can or is willing to stand up and talk in front of a microphone and share their story and share their truth like you guys have done today. So we're both very grateful for what you're doing in the community. You guys are both making a huge positive impact. So thank you again. We've got about
Thank
a
you both.
minute
Thank
left
you
or
both
so.
for your leadership.
Is there anything else that you guys want to add just before we end it?
I would really like to get a feel if I'd like to start a support group.
Okay.
For
I think it's a great idea.
Caregivers or family members who are left behind to care for the grandkids.
I think it's a great idea.
I think that we're more our voices are heard when we're unified.
Absolutely.
And given a testimony, because what I experience, what you experience, and what somebody else experience is totally different.
Yeah.
And I have a village. My parents, I have many siblings and cousins and stuff that are willing to step up, but I also know there are people who have nobody.
Absolutely.
And I think that we need to come together and be unified, and we need to have our voices heard, because if we're really going to get to the bottom of this epidemic, we can't just meet the needs of the addict.
No.
We need to meet the needs of those who are left behind. Because as you said earlier, Nate, it is a vicious cycle.
Yeah, it is.
And we need to have upstream initiatives so that we're not looking at things and approaching things downstream.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think we can continue here in a minute. If you want to catch the rest of the podcast, it'll be on Facebook and on all the other podcast platforms. But with that, we're going to wrap up this episode for TV.
Yeah. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.